Hello, hello. Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay? Great. Then let's start. Well, today we are going to talk about incremental static regeneration. Hope you had a great lunch. Did you drink much beer, wine? Hope that the dark room is not an invitation to take a nap. So I'll try to make it dynamic for you so you don't get bored about me. First of all, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is FACUNDO GIULIANI. I'm a developer relations engineer at Storyblok. Probably you saw the booth outside. If you want to learn what Storyblok is, you can come to us and we will discuss about it. I'm also one of the organizers of React Buenos Aires. That's the biggest React community in Argentina. And we also run monthly meetups, in-person meetups. Well, I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Anyone else from Argentina, Latin America? Eso. Buenísimo. Well, you have my website there, my Twitter, in case that you want to discuss about any other topic. I know that this is a lightning talk, so I will try to be fast. You see what I did there? Lightning, Pikachu, you know, lightning. No, but well, I will try to be fast. Speaking about fast, today we talk about static web pages. First of all, I wanted to describe what a static web page is. We are talking about a web page that is delivered to the user exactly at its store in the web server. So we say that a static website is a group of HTML files, CSS files, JavaScript code that we are delivering to the users exactly as they are stored in the web server. So we just deliver the file. We don't do any dynamic processing. We don't execute any dynamic logic to generate any content. We are just delivering files through the internet. Probably if you are old as me, you are, if I say static web page, this is the first thing that came to your mind, or probably this website, the Space Jam website. In fact, this website is alive. If you go to Google and you look for Space Jam, you can visit this website that is the same as the 90s. But yeah, at that time, they are static websites, that's true. But we also have other use cases that are created nowadays. We can talk about personal blogs or portfolios, news portals, e-commerce platforms, documentation websites, because when we are delivering HTML files, CSS files, and JavaScript code, if we are delivering the same file and the same content to all the users that visit our website, we talk about the static web page, even though that we are some kind generating dynamic content, probably using JavaScript and consuming services, or we are calling an API, for instance. So these type of websites are also considered static web pages or static websites if we are not executing dynamic if we are not generating dynamic content on the server, or we are not relying too much on the client to generate the content that we want to display to the people. You can go to the link that I shared at the bottom of the slide. There are more statistics about how the static web pages are being used nowadays. That's the official webpage for the Jamstack approach. I presented a workshop last Thursday about the Jamstack, but if you want to talk about that topic, you can come to me and we can discuss that later. But again, we see these use cases. We talk about static web pages. What's the thing, or why we talk about static web pages? Well, they have some benefits. For instance, static web pages are fast because as we are not executing dynamic logic, the only thing that we need to do is to deliver files. So that will make that will increase the performance of our websites. They are cheap because, again, we don't need any custom logic on the server to generate this dynamic logic or this dynamic content. We can deliver the files as they are. They are more secure because as we are not executing code for every request that we receive on the web server, we don't have to worry about the security of that code. And on the other hand, they are easy to scale because we can add more storage to our web server, and we can store more files, which will be more pages, or we are getting our project bigger and bigger. Cool. So static web pages. When I started working or playing with all the web development, this was the tool that I used to, that I use every day to create websites. I hope that some of you know what I'm talking about, so I don't feel that old. Okay. Whew, Well, I will continue. But yeah, I mean, nowadays we created a lot of new tools, a lot of new frameworks that we want to use and we enjoy using every day, like React, Angular, or Vue.js. They provided a lot of features and functionality that make the work easier to create user experiences and websites. And the truth is that we still want to use them, even though that we want to create static web pages. So having that in mind, a concept was developed, the concept of static site generation, which means compiling and rendering a web application at build time to generate static assets like HTML files, JavaScript code, and CSS files. I mean, static web pages, but creating a project that will contain different data sources, different templating engines. We can contact APIs, third-party services, databases, etc. We create the project using our favorite framework. I mean, there are static site generators for different technologies, different programming languages and frameworks. And we create this project that will contain some kind of build process that whenever we execute this build process, we are generating the static assets that will conform our website, right? I mean, we are generating the CSS files, the HTML content, and the JavaScript logic that we will deploy on the web server so we can offer our website to the users. About these static site generators, today I will focus on one of them. I like to use React. Well, we are on React Alicante, so I imagine that you like to. Next.js is a framework that is based in React. I mean, it's a React framework, let's say, that allows creating different types of user interfaces or experiences. And the cool thing is that we can use static site generation, but we can also generate content on the server, right? Using server-side rendering and, well, other different features and capabilities that I encourage you to learn more about Next.js because it's a great tool. But as I was mentioning, it allows us to handle different routes or pages of our project. And using, managing these routes, we have the possibility of using a page-based logic, define what type of rendering method we want to use for the different pages of our project. So we can use static site generation, we can use server-side rendering in the case that we want to generate the content on the server, or we can also use client-side rendering in the case that we want to rely on the client to generate the content that we want to display to the users. So if we use client-side rendering, we will request a web page to the server, and the server will return some kind of HTML document with a lot of JavaScript logic that will be the logic that we will use in the user's browser to generate the content that we want to display to them. If we use server-side rendering, we will request the web page, but the HTML content will be generated in the server and delivered to the user directly the HTML document as it if were an HTML document that was pre-generated. If we use static site generation, the server will be the one that executes this build process and will generate the static assets. We will deploy the static assets on a web server, and whenever the client visits our website, we will deliver the static files that are part of our website. So we are not calling or we are not executing any logic to generate the content that we are delivering to the user. So as we said before, I mean, we are storing static files that we deliver to the user, and that will make the performance to increase. As I said before, we can define this rendering method depending on the page or the pages that we are visiting on our project. That's something that Next.js offers us. But on the other hand, when we use static site generation, we can define which pages we want to build or generate at build time whenever we run this build process. So let's suppose that I have a news portal with different articles, and we are writing and publishing different articles every day with my agency. Let's say that the day that I launch my website, I have 10 news, which is totally fine. But after a couple of months or years or years of having this website, I start having thousands or millions of articles created. And the thing is, if we have to, if whenever we run this build process, we have to generate 1 million of pages, that will take some good amount of time, right? And the thing is that the site that the users are visiting is, as we said before, a static version of the website. So we are not generating the content dynamically. So if we edit something on any of these pages or files, we will need to run the build process again. Or if I have a typo on a page, or if I'm publishing a new article, I will have to run the same build process to generate all the web pages again. So using Next.js, we have the possibility of defining which pages we want to create at build time. So for instance, with the news portal, probably we can generate the static version of the home page of my website and the latest 10 articles, for instance. So if the users are visiting those 10 articles, we deliver the static version of them. But if a user wants to read an article from last year, we have to define a different logic because, I mean, we didn't pre-generate that version of the page. So, well, in that case, Next.js offers different approaches. Like we can, for instance, return a 404 error and saying that the page doesn't exist, or we can use server-side rendering to generate that page, but that we won't have the same performance that we are expecting to have with the static site generation. But the thing is that if we create all the pages, I mean, not only the last 10 articles of my website, if we create all the pages at build time, while my site is getting bigger and bigger and I'm having more articles or more pages, the build time will get bigger and bigger. So let's suppose that I publish all the pages of my news portal and I realize that the title of a certain news is not correct, or there's a typo, or I need to change the header image of my article, and I need to run this process again, and that's not performant. So having that in mind, Next.js developed a new feature called Incremental Static Regeneration that enables the developers to use static site generation on a per page basis. So we don't have to build the entire website. We can define some kind of cache system for the different pages, and whenever we want to generate the static version of a page, we can do that in the background while we are offering the static version of the page to the different users and visitors of my website. So I will have a build process that will generate all the static files of my websites, or the one that I want to define. We will offer the cache version of those pages to the users, and we will define a revalidate value that is, the value is in seconds. I will define this revalidate property in my code that I will say, after I generate the page, let's say the version 1 of my page or my files for the first time, if a user visits a certain page after 60 seconds, in this case, I will return the cache version of my page to the user, but in the background, I will trigger a build process just for that page. So I will be generating the new version of my page, which can be the same if nothing changed. I mean, if the content didn't change, if the logic or the code of the page didn't change. But it can be different if something changed, you know, because if I have a typo or an image that I need to change, probably I need to generate this new version, but I want to still offer the static version of my page to the users. So in the background, I generate this new version. After it's generated, I make it the official version of my web page. So the next user that visits my website will see the version 2 or the new version of my page. I want to show you a quick demo of the code. You can see the link there, but I will share the slides later, so I don't want to take a lot of time. This is a website, a simple website. You can see that I will render this same page using 3 methods, like server-side rendering, static site generation, and incremental static regeneration. This is the one using server-side rendering. If I refresh the page, I mean, whenever I'm refreshing the page, I'm generating a new version because I'm generating all this code dynamically, all this content dynamically for the users. So I will show this version of the page to all the users. This is static site generation. So I run a build process and I generated the static version of this page. And lastly, I have incremental static regeneration that if I refresh it, I mean, you will see the same version, but because, as I said before, I have a revalidate value that I set, but as the content didn't change, you will see always the same version. Probably if you are from Alicante, or if you are not from Alicante, you will see something that is not correct in this website, and is that the third picture, well, that stadium is not in the city, or as far as I know, it is not in the city. Actually, is the stadium of the biggest football team from Argentina, Boca Juniors. I encourage you to visit it, or you can call me and we can pay a visit. But yeah, let's say that the content creator or the editor was some kind of sleep when creating the page, and there was an issue there. We need to change the picture because we are telling the people to come to Alicante and we are showing a picture that is not from Alicante. So to change the content, I'm using Storyblock, which is a headless content management system. I won't go super deep into that because Arisa, my colleague, did a great job explaining before what Storyblock is and how it works. But here we have the visual editor of a Storyblock. I want to actually change the code, the content that I'm sharing to the users. I will pick a picture from Alicante, I mean a real picture from Alicante, and I will publish it. So after I change the content that is being consumed through an API from my code, I will show you the code quickly. I mean, what you can see here is a Next.js project. We have the folder structure that define the different routes and URLs that I will manage in my Next.js project. And I can define, as I mentioned before, the rendering method that I will use for each one of these routes. So for this is the one using server-side rendering. We have a get server-side props function that is being executed. As my website only has the home page, I will grab the URL home. I will call the get Storyblock API, which is the Storyblock API client. I will bring all the content related to the page that I'm visiting, and using this function, I will render the content correctly. But as I'm using server-side rendering here, I will run this request for every user that is visiting my website. In this simple example, you won't see any performance issue because, I mean, it's pretty small. But imagine a big page with a lot of data sources and you start to struggle with it. So you probably need to use static site generation, which is this example. We have a get static path. With this function, we will define the list of pages that we want to create at build time. As I mentioned before, the home page is the only one that I have here, but you can define all the pages of your website or just a subset of it. And then we run this get static prop function, which is exactly, I mean, the code is very similar to the get server props, but in this case, this function is being executed at build time, and we are generating, again, the static version of our pages. Finally, we have the incremental static regeneration example, where the code is practically the same as the static site generation example. But if you see here, I'm setting this revalidate value that I mentioned before in 10 seconds. So that means that after I generated the static version of my pages, if 10 seconds later a user comes and visits my website, I will run this process in the background to generate the new version of my page, and to the following user that will visit my page, I will show the newer version of my website. So if I go here again to my example, this is server-side rendering. So as we said, if I refresh the page, now I will get the new version of my page because I'm executing the logic for every visitor, for every request that I get. If we use the static site generation example, if I refresh the page, I will still get the wrong version of my page because I didn't run the build process again. I mean, you didn't see me running the build process again. So I will still see the wrong version of my web page. Finally, with the incremental static regeneration, if my explanation was correct and if I did everything cool, if I refresh the page now, I will see the wrong version of my website. But in the background, we are running this process to generate the new version of the page. So if I refresh it again, or I'm a different user or visitor, I should see the new version of the website without having to run the complete build process again for the whole website. So there are some interesting links that I encourage you to read. Again, I will share the slides later so you can take a look, but Next.js official documentation, we have a great tutorial on Storyblock official website, and then if you want to learn more about Next.js, you can go to the last link. But well, thank you very much. Muchas gracias.